What is memory? I often find myself in arguments over what I remember versus what other people do. And yet, in this digital age, I feel as though as a culture and society, we remember less. Memories are strange things. Strange in that they're so frequently wrong, yet often completely trusted. I fear we are slowly living in a society without context. We see the moment, the throes of ecstasy or agony, without living outside the frame. Walt Disney once said, "Never make a movie only your mother would want to see." Or at least that's what one of my ex-girlfriends used to quote him. Maybe he never did. She's off living in Finland now, which makes sense since she's Finnish. I still think of her fondly, though my current girlfriend would probably be angry to hear that. So why did I confess this? Why would I admit something that would mean little to someone I barely know anymore, especially when someone I care so very much about would take it personally? Perhaps filmmakers tend to think of their movies as confessionals, that somehow they're safe writing emotions to be acted by others, similar to how writers exercise their demons through their novels. I don't think of films in that way. I see scripts in films more like messages in bottles. Over time, I've amassed quite a number of messages in bottles. Wherever I travel, I'm always taking pictures and videotaping. This was not always the case. For a good many years, I shunned both of these. I kept a journal, but it was my only attempt at recording my existence. Perhaps this film is a form of overcompensating for all that time lost. I lived in Prague for a couple years, and that's where I became addicted to Milan Kundera. There's something about his writing that's always resonated with me. In the Book of Laughter and Forgetting, he weaves stories that keep going back to how and why we remember things. The most memorable story to me actually starts the book. In it, a communist leader addresses a crowd in Prague in 1948. Bareheaded and cold, he is given a hat by one of his comrades. This scene is photographed and appears in newspapers everywhere. It is an iconic image that is seen by everyone. A couple years pass, and the man who gave up the hat is tried and executed for treason. Soon, all traces of him are erased by the country's propaganda agency. The photograph that everyone knows is altered. He is removed. Where he used to stand is now a blank wall. The only proof of his existence is his hat. In a way, we have our own propaganda departments in our mind, covering up the events we want to so desperately forget. But in this day and age of digital memory, we're never allowed to forget what happens. There are cameras everywhere. Even when we're not taking a picture, someone, somewhere is. Are we any better for it? The thing is, today I'm constantly recording these images, but never going back to reflect on them. When I used to shoot on film, I would at least go through the motions of dropping them off at a photomat, picking them up, and looking at them once before filing them away forever. Now, I don't even do that. In this digital age, I take pictures that get saved on a hard drive, someplace, somewhere. They're labeled automatically and are indistinguishable by their anonymous file names. As I stare at these files, I'm forced to wonder what I'm even going to do with all of it. There's no method, only madness here. Maybe I'm just a voyeur. I'm rarely in the photos and video. Instead, I'm behind the camera, controlling the image, but hardly being a part of it. So here are some of my memories, captured, digitized, and reimagined. Nothing you see happened the way it appears. I work on a lot of projects that have taken me around the world. I'm still amazed at how little Americans travel internationally. Some time ago, I moved to Prague for a couple years. I drank a lot, but I learned a lot about filmmaking and life. In some ways, my ever-increasing problems behind the camera were more interesting than projects I would shoot. When I was in college, I had a hard time keeping a girlfriend. It wasn't that I didn't want one, it's just I had trouble keeping one. I dated and hooked up a lot, but I wasn't interested in settling down. When I hit Prague, this trend continued. The funny thing was, that Finnish girlfriend that I mentioned earlier, Her and I dated off and on for a while, but I don't have any pictures with her. No video either. We didn't have a bad breakup and still stay in touch, but somehow we never felt the need to record ourselves. When we broke up, it was as if she had never even been in my life. On the other hand, a girl I started seeing several months later, I have tons of photos with. She was American, so maybe it was a cultural thing. We broke up not long after returning to the US because we found ourselves worlds apart, both figuratively and literally. But getting back to Prague, it truly is a city for lovers. A film I worked on while I was over there was about two elderly people falling in love. I didn't write it, but a lot of my scripts and journal entries couldn't avoid the topic. While there, I was even forced to take copious notes for a class on the history of the country. It was required for only one semester, but I took it 4 times. This is primarily because it was so fascinating. I probably know more about the Czech Republic than most people who live there. But then again, there are some people who probably know more about American history than I do. Slowly, the notes devolved into more brainstorming and daydreaming than note-taking. My past professors should not worry or weep. You've given me more insight than you'll ever know. Inspiration is a weird thing. In the course of writing and editing this, I had 6 different scripts I was all writing concurrently, and several edits that were all wildly going in different directions. Most of these directions were terrible, but somehow I kept writing. I kept editing. The problem I faced was how to create a story where there was none. Should the narrative come first, or the narration? Are forced keystrokes better than an empty screen? Worse, as time kept ticking, my memories were getting hazier. I loathe the word forget, but events were starting to slide and disappear. The project was taking on a mythical quality. Every time I thought I would have a fully realized idea, the footage would not exist, or somehow it would not live up to how I thought it would be. I was beginning to think I was trying to grab onto something that was not tangible. The images and video I kept watching over and over again were bringing me no closer to an epiphany on memory. Rather, they were showing me how much I had forgotten. I keep staring out of windows, and I keep trying to remember.